Right, so in today's video, we're going to be doing a small renovation on this lawn. Nothing major, but before we do, let's have a look at the condition of the lawn now that we're getting towards the end of April. So if you just come around the entire space, you can see, for the most part, it's looking really nice. And when it's in the sun, you can see that the dark green really does pop. And the actual sward itself is quite thick. You can see the soil layer between the blades, and when it's not as sunny, it's a little bit more prominent, but you'd say for the most part it's fairly healthy, it's fairly thick. You can see that I've trimmed this bush. Trimmed is an understatement really. I've hacked it within an inch of its life, but we've got this space around the outside of it now, around the perimeter, which we are going to need to overseed today. So that's part of the reason why we're doing this renovation at the moment. So yeah, and let's have a little chat as well about what sort of seed we're going to be getting down. I've learned a little bit about grass varieties over the past few weeks, so I know sort of the rough differences now between your ryes, your fescues, your bents. And from looking at old photos and videos from when we first moved into this house, the developer seems to have put down predominantly sort of a fescue lawn. You can sort of tell by the way the grass actually looked and the way it was grown when we sort of left it for quite a while. But what I did do last year was I completely renovated this space, so scarified it really heavily, ripped out a lot of that grass. Obviously there's a lot of fescue that was still there, but we did a really heavy overseeding of ryegrass. And what that meant was this has become now predominantly a ryegrass lawn, but there is still some fescue knocking about. So because it is a lot, rye based, I'm going to be sticking with ryegrass in today's video. I'm going to be getting that down onto the lawn just so we can keep that consistency. The grass that's here now seems to be thriving and doing well, and bearing in mind with the back end of April at the time of recording, and the only things I've done to this lawn in 2024 is I've cut it every week. I have put some liquid iron down and some seaweed back end of Feb, and then it had a feed right at the start of March, so it's been nearly 2 months. Nothing's really happened to this lawn except 2 weeks ago at the time of recording, I actually hollow tine aerated the space, so it took cores out of the soil, just to enable more oxygen to get down and to give the roots somewhere to go as well, to get them even further and deeper into that soil profile. If you want to check that video out, I'll leave a link somewhere on the screen now. So to start the renovation, we're going to scalp this lawn, and that way what we're going to do is we're going to stress the grass out, and then that's going to mean that it's going to take a little bit longer to recover, but during that time the seeds will be able to germinate and actually fight for a place in the lawn. Because if you didn't know, with ryegrass, if you keep cutting it, it's never going to multiply in terms of the plants. One seed becomes one plant, so the only way to really thicken this up is to overseed it, and to give those seeds a chance, we're going to have to scarify this space. So we're going with the hater and then go from there. It doesn't seem stressed enough really. It's the sward is quite nice, it's quite tightly packed together. Obviously don't need tons and tons of seed down, but I might drop the hay slightly low and just test a little patch to see whether I can go a little bit shorter. I think that's probably testament, to be honest, to how healthy the lawn is, the fact that it's been scalped right down to, the lowest setting, and it's still, the sward is tightly packed together. I'll show you now. So you can actually see from above, the sward is still quite thick. You see where some of those holes are from the hollow tine aeration, but so far, so good. So the next port of call is to actually scarify the space. Now, there's a couple of reasons why you'd scarify your lawn. The first one would be to actually remove thatch, but the second one is to create a seed bed. Now, because this is a predominantly ryegrass lawn, it's not really got a whole lot of thatch because rye doesn't produce a shed ton. Now, there's a bit of fescue in there which has created a little bit, and rye inevitably will, over time, but it's more just about clearing out the canopy ever so slightly, and also getting the blades of the Scarify to just lightly nick the soil, because we want something for those new seeds to fall into, so that gives them a better chance at, you know, germinating. So what I am going to do is leave the Scarify on the highest setting, do one pass. I might drop it lower if I feel it's needed, if it's not really nicking the soil very much. But yeah, we'll play it by ear and we'll go from there. You can see it's not really taking much out of the canopy. There's a few sort of grass blades, most of those are just because it's vertically cut the lawn effectively. What I am after is sort of this effect. Now, there's like little channels there. When we overseed, the seeds can fall down into these little spaces. So I don't have to be that aggressive across the entire space. What I will do is I'll go along, we'll do another pass, I'll knock it down. So that's the setting we've been on. We'll drop it down to this one, and it should hopefully nick a little bit more. That top setting isn't really designed to get down to the actual soil layer itself, but it was better to start with that setting than to just drop it down really low to begin with, because then you can end up doing more damage than good to the actual lawn. Let's go another direction as well, spice it up a bit. You know, variety is the spice of life at the end of the day. There we go, you can just see there's not a lot of thatch in there whatsoever, but it has made a few little score marks along in the soil. So yeah, we'll rake it up, get it on the compost bin, then we'll start getting on with the seed. So the ryegrass mix we're going with is A1 Lawns Premiership Pro Mix, which is the same mix I've used on this lawn in the past. So last year overseeded it a couple of times using the exact same mix, doing the same thing this year because for the most part it's done well. I mean, the only issue with ryegrass really that I found, other than, you know, one seed become one plant, is the fact that it grows vertically quite a lot. Bent grasses and fescues grow laterally quite a lot. The more you cut them, you prune them, they multiply, whereas with rye, you haven't to cut it loads. But I don't mind that because I like getting out every so often and giving the lawn a cut. So the sown rate for this is roughly 20 grams per square metre if you're going to be overseeding. If you are going to be seeding it from scratch, it's more like 35 to 50, but 20 just for the overseed. And the fact that the sward is quite thick means that we don't need to get tons of this down today. What I'm going to start off by doing is just measuring out. I'll take one scoopful first, see how much that weighs. Now it's about 200 grams, which should cover around about 10 square metres. We're working with more like 15 to 18 maybe on this lawn. So I'll go with 2 scoops, and that should be plenty. Now what I will do is I might get some on the patch near the bush in a moment, but depending on what it's looking like, I might go over and just hand seed that space just to make sure we get enough seed down in that space. It is important to mention as well that not every seed is going to germinate. Your success rate will depend on how much you water the lawn after the fact and how much sort of warmth it gets from the sun. But if you get 70%, that's half decent. But I'm putting enough down where it's really going to thicken this up so that I can have a really tightly packed sward of ryegrass. I've just thought as well, I didn't go over this space with the Scarify, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to lightly rake this bit of soil just to break it up to create that seed bed. As ever, I'm going to put this drop spreader on the highest possible setting because the ryegrass seeds are quite big, and put it on a too lowest setting, it's not all going to fall out in an even distribution. Right, and the last thing you're going to want to do is just top dress your lawn, because you need to put the seed under around about 1 or 2 mil worth of soil. I'm using a top dressing today, which is 70% sand, 30% topsoil, nice and thin, nice and sandy, easy to distribute across the lawn, and it's just going to mean that your seeds can stay sort of within that soil profile, stay nice and warm, whereas, you know, they will germinate if they're sat on the top of the soil. The only issue is bird take, and also as well, they'll be colder on top of the soil, whereas if you bury them just ever so slightly, then you can retain more of that heat from the sun, which then aids with germination. Right, so there we go. The overseeding is complete. If I'm being really honest, I'd probably stick with using the topsoil next time. The actual sand, well, the top dressing, the sandy top dressing was really tough to actually get around and distribute evenly across the lawn. You'll notice I've used everything from the rake to the lawn loop to the actual, you know, just garden brush. And the garden brush seems to do the best job at sort of moving the top dressing about. If anyone's got any advice, you know, drop it in the comments below as to the best way to distribute it across your lawn. Maybe I just had mixers that were just slightly too sandy. It seemed like a lot more than 70%. But nevertheless, the overseeding is complete. It has been top dressed, and now we've got some decent temperatures coming in the next few weeks. Fingers crossed we have some germination within the next 7 to 14 days. So thanks for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, feel free to give it a like, and if you'd like to check out any of my other lawn tip videos or any of my garden renovation videos, head over to my channel, and if you like what you see, feel free to subscribe. Finally, thanks for watching.